Samantha Markle has never told me a lie. Every single thing that she has said about either you or Meghan has checked out factually. And she is now suing Meghan. You're prepared to testify for Samantha against Meghan? Is that correct?
That's the whole thing. The Scooby character gets information from Meghan.
Odd little man.
Something big just dropped, and people everywhere are doing a serious double take. Samantha Markle is stepping back into the spotlight, and this time she's coming in strong, claiming she has real proof about Meghan Markle's actual age. And it's already got the internet buzzing like crazy. For years, Meghan's story has looked smooth, polished, almost too perfect. But now, questions are popping up fast, and not everyone is buying the official version anymore. Samantha isn't holding back either. She's pointing at documents, timelines, and past statements, saying they don't line up the way people think. According to her, there's a whole different version of events that hasn't really been looked at closely until now. And now that this is spreading, people are digging deeper than ever. Everyone's trying to figure out what's real and what might have been overlooked. Social media is going wild. Opinions are clashing hard, and the pressure is building as more eyes lock onto this situation. Is this just a misunderstanding getting blown up? Or is there actually something unexpected hiding in plain sight? Stay locked in, because what's coming next could seriously change how people see this whole story. For years, Samantha Markle has been speaking out, dropping small hints here and there. At first, a lot of people brushed it off like background noise, but now, some are starting to circle back and rethink everything she said. What once sounded easy to ignore is now getting a second look, and people are asking if those early warnings were dismissed way too fast. According to Samantha, Meghan's public timeline doesn't fully match how it's been presented.
Many people out there have been speculating on that Meghan Markle has lied about her age. Is she actually older?
There is something that is not connecting. There is something that is not right.
And when you're pregnant, there's not a pillow under your skirt. And there's live footage of her walking towards camera with her abdomen swaying left to right in a black and white check.
While the media painted a clean, flawless picture, she kept pointing out little details that felt off. Not loud, not dramatic, just small cracks in a polished image. And now people are starting to look closer. Every birthday post, every milestone, every carefully shared moment. What if those details aren't as simple as they seem? This isn't just about family tension anymore. It's turning into something much bigger, and people are watching closely. It's not just talk anymore. It's about dates, patterns, and gaps that are leaving people with more questions than answers. When Samantha first brought this up, a lot of people brushed it off fast, calling it personal drama instead of actually looking deeper. But time passed, and suddenly old photos, archived interviews, and public records started popping back up again. Now people are paying real attention, and what used to be ignored is getting picked apart online like never before. Viewers are zooming in, replaying clips, and asking questions they never even thought about before. Now, to keep it real, none of this is confirmed as fact. This is all part of an ongoing conversation, and people are seeing it from completely different angles. But the reason it's blowing up like this is simple. These same questions keep coming back again and again. And when something keeps resurfacing like that, curiosity naturally grows, and people start demanding answers. Some observers have pointed out moments where past interviews, school timelines, and early life stories don't line up perfectly. That alone doesn't prove anything, but it definitely leaves room for different interpretations. And in a world where everything gets analyzed frame by frame, even the smallest detail can turn into a huge talking point overnight.
Quote Tom Bauer by saying, he said, look, we all laughed at Samantha and she was right. And everything she said has come true.
But if you look at this, Meghan Markle has been incredibly quiet about the birth, but mostly the pregnancy of these children. Everything has been shady. The one who's been blabbing and saying crazy.
This situation is also sparking a bigger conversation about image and branding. Celebrities today carefully shape how they're seen, controlling what gets shown and how it's presented. So naturally, people start wondering, how much of any public story is completely real, and how much is adjusted for the spotlight? And this isn't just about Meghan, it's happening across the entire entertainment world. Still, Samantha hasn't changed her message at all. She keeps saying her concerns come from personal memories and experiences that don't fully match what the public has been told. That's what keeps this whole situation alive. She keeps pointing back to moments from their early years that, in her view, don't fully match the version most people know. Samantha recalls specific childhood memories where Meghan was said to be a certain age, but when those details are lined up, some people feel like the timing doesn't fit as neatly as expected. Again, none of this is confirmed. It's all interpretation, but that hasn't stopped the conversation from getting louder, especially as more people start revisiting the same details again. What makes it even more intense is how fast public opinion can flip. Someone who was once dismissed can suddenly be taken seriously when new discussions seem to echo what they said before. That doesn't prove anything by itself, but it does show that more people are willing to listen now. And this goes beyond just one claim. It's about how stories are shaped, how they evolve over time, and how quickly public perception can shift when new angles come into play. Because once people start rechecking old details, things can get complicated fast. When viewers started going back through old family photos, some pointed out moments that didn't fully match the timeline. A few even felt Meghan appeared older in certain images.
Copy of 17 magazine, and it was published in March of 1997. In it, it mentions our Megsy from Los Angeles and that she was 21 years old at the time of publication. That would make her birth year at around 1976.
And you're wondering, why does her age matter at all? Because her age would also have an impact on her ability to have children. Because if Meghan Markle is 4 years older than what we have been led to believe, it makes it even more difficult to believe that she was able to get pregnant
than what public details might suggest. That doesn't confirm anything, but it definitely added more fuel to the online debate. Through all of this, Samantha has stayed consistent. She says she isn't trying to create drama. In her eyes, she's just connecting details that don't seem to line up. And that steady approach is what keeps people watching closely. As Meghan's public image became more polished and widely recognized, Samantha's concerns slowly faded into the background, but she never stepped away from her perspective. To her, this was never about gossip. It was about details that didn't seem to align the way they should. She's described it like putting together a puzzle. If the numbers don't match, then something might feel off, at least from her point of view. And no matter how strong a public image looks, questions don't just disappear. They stick around, waiting for someone to take a closer look. That's exactly what Samantha has been pushing for this whole time, a closer look. When she started speaking more openly, it didn't come across loud or chaotic. It felt more like someone asking people to really think things through and pay attention. Her main point stayed simple. If even small details seem unclear, it naturally makes people wonder about the bigger picture, not as a direct claim, but as a question that keeps spreading. And that question didn't explode overnight. It moved quietly, building over time like a conversation people couldn't let go of. Because once one detail gets questioned, it can change how everything else is viewed. Then things shifted again.
You can see that the official records show she was born in 1981. There it is, August 4th, 1981.
She said, I lost my father. We knew that she didn't lose our dad. She iced our father. In my opinion, she would still be a waitress if it wasn't.
Samantha wasn't the only one revisiting these details. Meghan's father, Thomas Markle, also shared his perspective, adding another layer to the situation. From most accounts, he didn't come across like someone trying to create mystery. Instead, it felt like a father remembering everyday moments. Birthdays, school events, family milestones, moments he had captured without thinking twice. He had photos, memories, and personal experiences that felt clear and familiar to him. But when Meghan's public story started appearing in major publications, he reportedly felt like something didn't quite sit right. The timeline looked clean, polished, almost too perfect. And that's where his own memories started clashing with what he was seeing. He shared that certain moments didn't fully match the public version. For example, he remembered key milestones happening at times that felt different from how they were later described. At first, he even questioned himself, because memory can fade over time. But after going back through old photos, documents, and keepsakes, he felt those pieces told a story that didn't completely match what was being presented. Not dramatically different, but enough to make people pause and take a second look. Some see this as normal mix-ups that happen over time, while others believe it's worth looking into more closely. And that's exactly where things stand right now. From his perspective, Thomas says he clearly remembers major life moments. First job, early opportunities, big milestones. But when he compares those memories to the widely shared timeline, he feels there are gaps that keep raising questions, are hard to ignore. None of this is confirmed fact, It's all based on personal accounts. But what keeps people locked in is how these different perspectives seem to overlap in certain places. In the end,
Both my daughters. I'm not happy with what one of my daughters is doing. And I don't know what caused her to do this. We've had this conversation before. She's telling lies.
She delivered it like an
it
actress
stops
delivered
being
it.
about just
Apparently,
one detail and turns into something bigger. How multiple versions of the same story can exist at the same time. And when those versions don't fully line up, people naturally start asking questions. When Thomas spoke on these differences, the reaction wasn't exactly supportive. A lot of people quickly brushed him off, saying he could be mixing things up or remembering things wrong. But from his point of view, this wasn't random confusion at all. These were major life moments, the kind that stay with you no matter how much time passes. He pointed to specific memories, a graduation outfit, a birthday dinner that stood out, even the year written on an old family Christmas card. These weren't vague flashes. They were tied to real dates, real events, real experiences, and that's when he started feeling like something deeper wasn't adding up. Because if the version of Meghan shown in official profiles doesn't fully match the person he remembers raising, then it raises a bigger question. Was the public seeing a slightly adjusted version of the story? Not something completely different, but maybe something refined for the spotlight. Then everything took a sharp turn. For a long time, people kept saying there was no solid proof, just opinions, just family disagreements. But then something surfaced that had everyone talking in a major way. An old issue of 17 magazine from March 1997 started circulating again online, and Meghan Markle was featured inside. What really caught attention wasn't just the feature, it was the age listed next to her name. According to that page, she was labeled as 21 years old at the time, not mid-teens, 21. And this wasn't just a random post or rumor. It was printed, published, and archived. Here's why that stood out so much.
No, he's not been a well man recently, and indeed it was a brush with death just last year that renewed his plea for reconciliation with his daughter Meghan, or Meg, and her husband Prince Harry.
I thought, I have to get mine.
If Meghan was born in August 1981, she would have been in her mid-teens in early 1997. That would place her in high school, not typically the stage connected with adult-focused features. So naturally, people started asking questions fast. Some tried to explain it right away. Maybe it was just a printing mistake. Maybe it was someone else with the same name. Those explanations are possible, no doubt. But others pointed out how closely everything matched. The name, the location, the timing. It all lined up in a way that made people pause and really think. And just like that, what once sounded like speculation started being viewed differently, not as confirmed truth, but as something that deserved a second look. For Samantha, this moment seemed to support what she had been saying for years. What many once dismissed as personal frustration suddenly started looking, to some, more like early concern about details that didn't fully line up. That magazine page quickly became a major talking point, because online posts can disappear, but printed material carries a different weight. It's fixed, archived, it doesn't change over time. Still, it's important to stay grounded. One detail doesn't rewrite an entire story, but it does add another layer. And that's why attention kept growing. Now it feels like two versions of the same story are being looked at side by side. One is the widely accepted public timeline, clear, structured, and backed by official records. The other comes from personal memories, older materials, and interpretations that don't always match perfectly. The official version presents Meghan as born on August 4th, 1981. With a timeline that moves through school in Los Angeles, early acting roles, and eventually global recognition later on. It's smooth, it's structured. On paper, everything flows exactly.
And missing in their eyes, it didn't seem real to me.
Doctor has come forward and has absolutely revealed, and you're going to listen to her. She has absolutely revealed and confirmed that Rachel Meghan Markle was never pregnant, never gave birth to any.
How you'd expect. But then there's the other perspective. The one shaped by people who say they were there, who remember things differently, and who believe certain details deserve a closer look. Then you have the version Samantha and Thomas have described over time. Not the polished story seen in headlines, but something that feels more raw from their point of view. In their telling, Meghan wasn't just a teenager figuring things out in the mid-90s. They suggest she may have been moving more like a young adult, stepping into spaces that don't fully match the official timeline. And that's where everything splits into two narratives. In one version, everything lines up neatly. ages, milestones, major moments. But in the other version, the numbers shift just enough to make people pause. Not a massive difference, but enough to change how the whole story could be viewed. For example, in the widely accepted timeline, Meghan is in her late 30s when Archie is born. But in the alternative perspective being discussed, some believe she could have been older. And that's not a small detail. A shift like that changes how people interpret everything around it. It becomes two versions running side by side, one clean and polished for the public, the other more personal, less filtered, and a lot more complex. And naturally, people are left wondering, which version is closer to the full picture? That's the question that keeps coming back again and again. The official records are clear and widely accepted, and that's what institutions and media rely on. But the alternative perspective keeps resurfacing, driven by personal accounts, older materials, and interpretations that don't fully match. And this is where the conversation grows even bigger. Because once people start comparing timelines, another question naturally comes up. How do major life events fit into each version? When Meghan's
Samantha Markle, a woman who you know I have a lot of respect for, and I've said publicly, and I will say it again because I know she's the subject at the moment of quite a vicious attack by the liberal American media.
Pregnancy was announced, it was presented as a joyful, perfectly timed moment. Headlines celebrated it. Photos looked flawless. Everything seemed to unfold smoothly. It felt like a real-life fairy tale playing out step by step. But some observers started looking at it from a different angle. If the alternative age theories were even slightly accurate, it could shift how that timing is viewed. That doesn't mean anything is confirmed. It just adds another layer of curiosity. From a general perspective, later life pregnancies are often associated with closer monitoring and extra care. That's widely known. So when people compare that general understanding to how everything appeared publicly, they notice a contrast. The public images showed a calm, polished experience. Everything looked effortless. Professional photos, smooth timelines, and quick recovery moments shared widely. It all felt extremely controlled, almost too picture perfect. And that's what keeps the discussion going strong. Some people see it as smart privacy and strong media control. Others feel like it leaves certain questions hanging. And once again, it all comes down to interpretation. There were also small details that kept adding to the curiosity. Things like limited public information around the medical side and carefully managed appearances that made everything look perfectly in place. All of that helped keep the conversation alive. And to stay clear, none of this confirms anything. These are observations, public discussions, and different viewpoints, not proven conclusions. But what makes it so gripping is how one question leads to another. If timelines don't fully match up, people naturally start revisiting everything connected to them. And once that starts, it's hard to stop digging deeper. At that point, it's no longer just about numbers. It becomes about perception, presentation, and how stories are shaped for the
Why? What she told the royal family, what she told Harry, wouldn't have jived, wouldn't have been consistent with the truth.
Never mind the hysterectomy stories that her family have told. But that would make it more difficult because that would make Meghan Markle
public eye. Because when everything feels too smooth, too perfectly arranged, some people start wondering what might be happening behind the scenes. Not anything extreme, but something more real. More layered, less polished than what's being shown. Then things took another unexpected turn. Details about the birth itself started getting attention, and what was meant to be a warm, personal story ended up raising even more questions after Prince Harry shared it in his memoir. The moment was described as calm, intimate, almost cinematic, soft lighting, everything flowing smoothly from beginning to end. It sounded like a perfectly directed scene. There was music, a relaxed atmosphere, and Meghan appearing strong and composed the entire time. The way it was told made everything feel effortless, like it all just fell into place without any complications. But here's where the conversation started shifting. When people with medical knowledge looked at that description, some pointed out details that didn't fully match typical hospital practices. Not as claims, just observations. And that sparked even more curiosity. The hospital itself is known for high-level maternity care, but even top facilities follow strict protocols. For example, after certain types of anesthesia, patients are usually monitored closely for a period of time. Recovery isn't instant. It requires careful observation to make sure everything is stable. So when the story described a very fast recovery and quick departure, it caught attention. Some professionals noted that generally, patients are expected to rest and regain strength before moving around freely. That's standard in many places. Yet in the memoir, the timeline felt compressed. Meghan was described as recovering quickly, looking energized, and leaving the hospital not long after. It all sounded smooth, almost too smooth. And that's what got people talking. Some believe the story may have been simplified for storytelling. Others think certain details were kept private. Both possibilities exist, and nothing is confirmed. But when people break the timeline down closely, it can feel tighter than expected. And that's what keeps the questions coming. From delivery to recovery to preparing to leave, everything seemed to happen within a very short window. Naturally, that raised eyebrows for people familiar with how these situations usually unfold. Then there's the practical side. Leaving a secure hospital in central London isn't simple. It involves coordination, transport planning, and post-birth checks. Add in the care needed for a newborn, and suddenly it becomes a process with a lot of moving parts. When people factor all of that in, the timeline starts to feel even tighter. Not impossible, but definitely unusual compared to what many would expect. Then comes the travel side. The journey from the hospital to Frogmore Cottage isn't instant, and when you combine that with recovery time, paperwork, and newborn care, it adds even more layers. All of this led to one big question. Why did everything seem so fast? Was it just privacy and efficiency? Or was the story shared in a way that focused more on emotion than exact timing? Even some supporters have pointed out that the timeline feels tight, not as criticism, but simply as something that stands out. And again, to stay clear, none of this proves anything is wrong. It's a mix of storytelling, public interpretation, and general understanding of medical processes. But what keeps people locked in is how one detail leads to another. A timeline that feels slightly off can quickly turn into a full breakdown, with people trying to connect every single piece. And when those pieces don't fully click at first, it starts to feel like a puzzle. And that's what keeps everyone searching for answers. Some believe it all comes down to privacy. Others think it's more about controlling how the story is presented. Either way, the level of precision makes everything feel almost too perfect, like each moment was carefully arranged for maximum impact. And that's where the bigger question starts to land. If the timeline of something as major as a birth feels simplified or tightly presented, people naturally start wondering what else might have been shaped for the spotlight. Not as a claim, but as a question that keeps coming back again and again. Because let's be real, a fast, flawless recovery makes a powerful headline. It fits the image, keeps everything looking smooth, and avoids messy details in the public eye. But real life is usually more layered than that. And people notice the difference? Now zoom out. This becomes about more than just one moment. It connects to how public figures build and manage their image over time. Reinvention isn't new. Celebrities do it all the time. But in Meghan's case, some observers feel the shift went beyond a simple rebrand. The move from actress to global royal figure didn't just feel gradual, it felt highly structured. Every interview, every appearance, every public statement added another layer to a very specific image. In the world of public life, that's often called image management. And while many high-profile figures rely on it, when everything lines up perfectly, it naturally makes people wonder, how much is organic? And how much is carefully shaped behind the scenes? By the time the royal spotlight fully hit, Meghan's public image looked completely polished. She appeared confident, composed, and fully prepared for the role. But according to Samantha and Thomas, the version they remember had more layers, more complexity, more imperfections, more real-life detail. And that contrast is exactly what keeps this conversation alive. At this point, it's no longer just about one timeline or one moment. It's about two different perspectives that don't fully match, both existing at the same time. One version is official, widely accepted and backed by public records. The other comes from personal memories, older materials, and interpretations that feel less polished, but more real to the people sharing them. And here's where it gets complicated. Once a story reaches a global audience and becomes widely accepted, it's extremely hard to reshape it. People don't usually go back and question what already feels settled. Not because they refuse to, but because that original version becomes deeply rooted over time. That's why these alternative perspectives stand out so much. Not because they prove anything on their own, but because they challenge a story that once seemed completely clear. They introduce doubt into something that felt locked in. Some people see that as important, others see it as unnecessary speculation, and both reactions are happening at the same time. But when you line everything up, the family accounts, the timelines, the discussions, the magazine detail, and the birth story, it creates a pattern that some find hard to ignore. Again, none of this is solid proof, but it's definitely enough to keep people talking. And at this point, it's not even about one single claim anymore. It's about how narratives are built, shaped, and maintained over time, especially in a world where image means everything. Because once a story is presented a certain way and repeated again and again, it becomes the version most people accept without question. And anything that doesn't fully fit that version starts to feel out of place, even if it raises genuine curiosity. So maybe this was never just about age or timelines. Maybe it's about something much bigger. How public figures shape their image, how stories are refined for the spotlight, and how hard it is to separate perception from reality when everything is constantly being watched and analyzed. Now it's your turn. What do you think about all of this? Do you feel like there's more to the story? Or is this just speculation that grew way bigger than expected? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit that like button. If you made it this far, don't forget to subscribe and share this with someone who's been following this too. Appreciate you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.